Hi everyone, I'm Indradeep and I'm back again to talk to you about another important essay for your MBA. This essay comes in various forms, but fundamentally what it's trying to understand is what are your strengths, what are your character traits, what is so unique about you. Uh, uh, there are various ways in which you can answer this question. My advice to you is always to try and make it as unique as you can about yourself. Um, have a think about what's so different that you bring into the classroom. Everybody has a different life story, and this is what they're trying to understand. There is no right way of answering this question. However, there is a right way of structuring the thoughts in your mind when you start thinking about how do you address this question, how do you communicate to the admissions committee. One of the big misunderstandings that most people have with regards to the MBA application is that you need to demonstrate a certain character trait. You need to come out and show that you are what a lot of people consider to be a true MBA candidate. There is none. That's why diversity is so brilliant. They want to see who you are. They just want to understand what you've done, who you are, how, what have you learned, more importantly, and most important, how are you going to use that learning in the context of future? Through the class, when you're working after your MBA, maybe in your own business, whatever that might be. So if you then think about this question from that context as to what are your strengths, what character traits, what defines you, what's your passion, what is so unique about yourself, tell us about your life story. They're all talking about one fundamental question. Tell us about yourself, but not just in facts. Tell us something that illustrates transferable skills, illustrates your understanding of who you are, illustrates what to do with your strengths, right? So it is slightly different, and I would really urge you to think about this question from that perspective. So how I would answer this question is I would start off by looking at what your background is. Tell me everything there is from your childhood, family, your relationships with friends, could be with your loved ones, could be with your parents, your study, your work experience, if you've done any master's degree, your hobbies, your extracurriculars. Start having a think about what it is that you've done that makes you who you are, and that has been instrumental in you achieving what you've achieved. Doesn't, and by that I'm not talking about achievements, I'm just talking about life stories. I'm talking about something unique to you, right? So what I would do is I would start with these different characteristics and these different times of your life and try and work out which one of these would give you the top 5 memorable stories about yourself. This is where you're not analyzing, you're just assimilating information. You're just gathering and collecting information from your memory, or if you don't remember enough, maybe talk to your friend or talk to your parents or talk to anyone who has vivid recollections of who you are when you were growing up as a child, when you started developing as an adult, the relationships and how that's transformed you. Different people react to the same scenario in different ways. That's what life is. That's what makes us so diverse, and that is what they're trying to understand. The more vivid and clearly you can articulate this, doesn't matter what your strengths are. Don't think about whether these strengths are proper strengths or not. As long as you can articulate why you think them to be your strengths, that's the most important part of your application process in terms of answering this question. So now that you've understood, or you've started thinking about these 5 different elements of your childhood, your relationship, your studies, your work experience, and your extracurricular activities, let's try looking at, from these 5 main categories, each category would have 2 or 3 different stories. Which one are your top 5 stories? Which stories are truly you? Could think about something that makes you unique, something that's been a great learning experience for you, something that you consider to be a good opportunity to disclose your strength or your weakness. Something that has helped you refocus in life, something that has aligned your thinking with what you know, a great experience meeting with someone and you learned something. So 5 stories from these 5 different categories. But the important thing to remember is they should be stuff that you've learned from, that you've developed, that you've grown, and that truly make you who you are, right? So rather than thinking about achieving a 750 on the GMAT, although that's a great experience, that's already there on your resume. What they're looking for is stuff that is not there on your resume, on anywhere else in your application. It is great if this could be supported by your recommender, but I'll cover a separate video where I'll talk about how do you assist your recommender to write recommendation letters. But at this stage, all we're looking for is evidence of development, evidence of learning, evidence of self-reflection, anything that you think makes you truly unique, makes you yourself, something that the admissions committee have not experienced or would not know by looking at the rest of your application. But equally important at this stage, I would rather say, is something that demonstrates that you've been able to assess and understand what life has to offer, the journeys that you've taken, and subsequently you've grown and developed as a person. Right? Should not be hard to come up with at least a couple of good stories against each of the 5 categories, and then within that pick up the 5 top stories. The more breadth it provides, the better. However, they should be working with one another, right? And that's a subtle skill which sometimes takes a bit of practice. But in essence, if I can give you an example, what I'm talking about is a skill where you've learned to be disciplined, maybe from your parents working in the army, or from your brother who's been to an army school, or because you've moved so much, you've picked up the traits of being perseverant and resilient, and these are character traits which are truly you. So when you get thrown into a situation, you would rely upon your past life experiences to get you through that, and that's the reason why people react differently, because their life experiences have been different, and therefore, as an extension, how they behave in those situations are different. That's all they're trying to find out. They're trying to work out in their mind without actually spending enough time with you. If I put a bunch of these 20, 30, 50, 100 kids together, how are they going to react? How would they start working with one another? How would teamwork be affected? How many of them are demonstrating true leadership as opposed to implied leadership, as opposed to leadership that's been granted on them because of the job title? So if that makes sense, pick up the top 5 stories, and then before you start writing down is the last step of preparation, which is pick up each one of the topics and elaborate on each one of the topics. Elaborate on things like give the situation. What was the background? What was the complication? What actions did you take? What was the result? And by result, we're talking about external result predominantly. How did it impact the stakeholder groups? How did it impact other people? How did it make someone else feel? Once you've got that going, the next part is what have you learned from that? How has that impacted you? What transferable skills have you picked up from there? At the end of this exercise, before we start writing and start worrying about word count and all the rest, at this stage, this should be a common exercise for every school. You should know what your strengths are, what your character traits are, what your life journey has been, the decision making in your life, and why. Why have you chosen that? Why is that such a big important example? What does it demonstrate? You've learned something. That's why it's important. After that is the final step of answering this question, which is for the particular school. So then comes in your understanding of what that school highly values. So for example, every school will have a mission statement, every school will have a goal. The dean of the school might come out and often make statements about what he or she considers to be the right pathway for the school. You would have students who come out and talk about the school and tries to articulate what they consider to be really strong values of the school. There could be schools which are highly collaborative. There could be schools which are highly competitive. There could be schools which provide a lot of focus on experiential learning, on leadership, on sustainability, on social causes, on giving back to the world. What is it that the school considers to be really passionate? And that's the final link to your life story. So once you've picked up the 5 top stories, and you've picked up and you've done the step exercise that I've just mentioned, in terms of starting with what the situation is and ending with what have you learned and what can you give back to the school and give back to others, and what has been a transferable skill. Once you've done that, the last step is linking all those 5 stories to the true things that the school values. It doesn't mean that you've got to link to all of them, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter almost if the things that you're picking up are not 100% aligned to what the school values. It doesn't matter. But what if it does? If some of them resonate with what the school values, that provides another great example of demonstrating how you would fit into the school. This process of MBA application is really interesting, because it's a two-way street. The school's trying to work out whether you're going to fit in there, you're trying to work out whether the school's going to fit in here. And through different essays and through your application process and subsequently your interviews, you're trying to demonstrate that this is the right school for you, and you're trying to demonstrate to them that this is the right school for you. Does it make sense? So initially you're trying to work out whether this school is good for you, and then you're trying to convince them that this school is actually good for you, and as an extension, you are good for the school. So if I may just go back to the last point I was talking about, think about or do a little bit of research, or talk to alumni, go onto the forums and try and work out what it is that the school values. What's the school strategy? What is the school dean's vision? What are some of those key elements that are coming up? And how does that align with your life story? Don't force fit them. Don't work backwards and try and create a story. Do it top down. Do your strengths, do the school's values, and try and match them. Even if it doesn't match, it demonstrates that you understand the logic of matching skills with requirements. And that's a very big skill in itself. At this stage, once you've hopefully done all that, and you've written down the 5 stories, and you've done the matching, you'll be able to come up with the top 3 characteristics. Most of the schools want 3. Some of them might want more, but very, very rare. Stick with 3, less good quality, good understanding, good appreciation. Link it all back, and then work on your word limit. That's the last stage. Word limit, typos, examples, all of that is last stage. At this stage, it's self-retrospection, understanding, introspection, as well as retrospection, and then going out, finding out from what your research suggests what the school wants, matching them all up. That hopefully should give you the primer on which you can now base your essay to answering what characteristics, skills, traits do you have that are unique to you. And at the end or at the beginning of the essay, could work either ways. I prefer doing it at the beginning and reinforcing at the end. But what you do out there is you highlight that these are the traits that make me truly who I am. As a last sanity check, go back to your parents, go back to your closest friend, and ask them, do you think that these character traits make me truly unique? They are the ones who know you best, right? I would also encourage that you do this process, this going back and confirming with your friends or with your family earlier on. So when you are writing those top 5 stories, talk to them and tell them that this is what I want to do, this is what I'm trying to understand. Is this what makes me truly unique? They would be the best person to give you a feedback at that stage. Once you've done that, reiterating, school, matching, put it down, and therein is your content. And then you start working with that content to fine-tune that, word limit, typos, grammar, making it prettier, using better language, but all that happens at the last 5% of your application. 95% is preparation, thinking, researching, and confirming with your friends and family. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a context as to how you can start working on on what character traits you need to demonstrate, what makes you truly unique, all those types of questions that can be answered by this kind of an approach. As I said before in my other videos, I will be posting you more videos on different aspects of the MBA application process. If you have any questions, please contact me on the email address that's provided below. I would love to hear back from you if this is helpful, what else you would like me to touch upon, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.